Giovanni's room. I'm going to get Zakiyah on the line. The song may have something to do with the book. That's all I'm going to say. The song How did
Hello.
it happen?
I don't know. So I have a theory. I think it like my friend was like liking the thing, and then it kind of went out.
Yeah, other people. That's weird. I don't know. I don't even. What was I saying?
Because you went out. I think you were talking about,
Oh,
last thing that I heard you saying was you were talking about James Baldwin, how he writes women.
oh, yeah. It was probably best that I got cut out at that time. I was definitely giving a hot take about James Baldwin that might have been a bit controversial. And just the way I think he feels about women. And not necessarily that he has anything against women. I just think that James Baldwin, even though he was grappling with a lot at that time, I think he still heavily viewed things from the position of a man. And I don't think he always understood the issues of women. Even just listening to some of his discussions with folks like Nikki Giovanni, like I just don't think that he got it. And when you don't live the life as the opposite sex, I don't think you can get it without a lot of intentional research and empathy. So I would say that we see that here with the women. Like I think all of the women in this story, their only existence is in connection to men and how they benefit the men. Mm-hmm. So I guess that does go back to the point. So even though I didn't explicitly think of it as like a power play or this, that dynamic, I think we do see that again and again. None of the women in this book stand independent of, the view of a man or the connection to a man.
Yeah. So. And I 100% agree with that. I'm glad that you got to repeat that because I wanted to hear what you were saying. But I was too thinking about even just a lot of the things that David said, even in the instance when Giovanni was talking about like she needs to get beat half to death. Like, what's she doing traveling the world? Like, these women, and like, even like the readings through what the men were thinking, I felt like similar to what you thought. Like, you just really can't get it unless like you've lived the experience or you're very empathetic and knowledgeable about it. So, yeah, I too got that. And I'm glad that I got to hear what you said. Because I was like, I can't.
Yeah, I was like, how do I say this? I was like, I know we all revere James Baldwin, but like, I think that sometimes we get so caught up in, that's going to be a good point, a good transition to my other point. I think sometimes we get so caught up in like our favorite authors and we deify them and forget that they're humans, right? So they can have flaws too, or just like human characteristics. So I think about that too when I think about the ending of the book and the trial of Giovanni and how humans can evolve, but they don't really change, right? So like everything that happened with Giovanni would happen today. The way that it played out in the press, the way that even though this man was deplorable, and I'm talking about what's his name?
It don't matter. I know who you're talking about, though.
Now that became a double entendre, but the G-Man, how he was deplorable and he used his money to take advantage of all of these young boys, right? But when he died, it became, because he was from a well-established, one of the oldest families in Paris, right? So it became, he was this, what did they call him? Eccentric philanthropist, right? So it's hinting at what he may have been, his sexuality, right? Without actually getting into it, because that would have caused controversy and caused folks to turn on him. Instead, it's like, we're going to use the family's historical position and their wealth so that the public will turn on Giovanni without even understanding any context or how this could have been self-defense. Essentially, he was hung in the public before he was ever beheaded, right? And I feel like we see the same thing happening today still. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was very frustrated with how everything was presented. So like you mentioned, it's not surprising in the least. I mean, this is a man who is, old money, old history. He's connected to France in a way, I guess, deeper way than Giovanni could ever be. Like, Giovanni is not even a Frenchman.
Right.
And the way that they just painted him out to be kind of like a user, like, he is taking advantage of this wonderful man who's given him a job and he is just a thief. And I was very pissed off reading it. And then, you know, the connection to like his French manhood. And I mean, there was just, I wish like I had the page for that part, because I feel like that would be really good to read. But just it's really that part was actually really interesting to me, because I was like, yo, this is kind of like social media, but you know, in France, set in, I guess, like around the 50s. And I guess it was also very difficult to read, because it was like we were hearing about how wonderful and great this man is that we know isn't great, and we know that Giovanni is a lot richer than they were presenting him. Like, I guess we're more connected to Giovanni than we were to G-Man. Mm-hmm. So we're like, nah, this is not even the case. And we don't, like, I'm gonna say, I don't know exactly what went down. Like, we have what David thinks went down, but we have no idea what went down. It could have been way worse. It could have been, we have no idea. But I'm sure whatever the case, it was definitely, I would predict that it was a situation in which G-Man was taking full advantage of a situation. Like, Giovanni doesn't have any money, doesn't have a roof over his head. Like, he's going to take advantage of this man that he has wanted and prayed over, really just prayed over for a very long time. So yeah, that was very interesting. I couldn't quite figure out if that was David's thoughts or if that was like actual like news that he was reading about, like through newspapers and things like that.
I took it as it was David's, not David's thoughts, that it was actually what David was reading.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of it, even the discussions with Hella, right? When he's discussing it with Hella, like, well, we know that's not who he was, and Hella's just kind of deflecting. She's not really concerned about Giovanni, right? She's just trying to save her relationship at that point. But yeah, I took it as this is what's being reported in the media, and this is how we're getting to get the knowledge through David.
Yeah.
I don't know. Were there, I mean, there's a lot that could be unpacked here. I guess, how did you feel? Okay, so I asked about the title. How do you feel about the title Giovanni's Room, and what do you think, what message do you think is being sent with that?
So when I first picked up this book, Giovanni's Room, I'm thinking that, for one, it's going to be heavily set in this room. And I also believed that Giovanni, like, we would get his perspective on something, like, in his own head. And so it was surprising to only be in David's head. And then also, it's really interesting too, because a lot of times in Giovanni's room, like, David said, our bed, our this, our that, when he's not really contributing anything to this. So that was really frustrating for me. But my dog's right in front of me. But I think it can kind of be misleading. And I don't know. Yeah, I think that's what I'm gonna say. Like, it can be misleading. I also think that it truly was his room, because David was just kind of there and like being a user, even though he claimed like it was their room and it was our bed and I'm helping him do this and I'm doing that. But so easily how he just left the room, and I don't know. You talk. You share.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. Because even as you say, like, you hear Giovanni's Room, you expect it to be more centered there. But I think the fact that it was such a small portion of this book, and in retrospect, it will end up being such a small portion of David's life, right? Because even as we get to the end of the book and he's ready to put it all behind him, right? He tears up the letter. He no longer needs to carry that. He's dead. He's moving forward. But even as he said, like, but the wind still blows some of it back on him, right? So, but it's not enough. Like, it won't be significant enough that it'll impact his life in any significant way, right? Like, Giovanni's life has been ruined. Hella's life has at least been significantly altered in some way, right? Like, I feel like she'll never date anyone now and not have a question, right? Like, so in some way, I feel like she's been changed by this as well. But I feel as if, even as we saw with the sailor, even though he had no significant role, David is able to continue to go forward and be whoever he feels he desires to be in a moment, and find others who will be able to meet his needs. So, yeah. But I don't think the name is appropriate, but it does give you a lot to reflect on.
Yeah. Yeah, and another thing, just I think like my last thing that I wanted to reflect on, and it's always a question I have at the end of a book, but like, now what? Like, what comes next, right? So like, we know like one man is dead. Two men are dead. So one of them, David was kind of connected to, like, through a friend of a friend. Giovanni was somebody that he carried on an affair with, dead. Hella is on her way back to America, and it doesn't seem like David is in any rush to go back to America. He's in fact going back to Paris, which I had questions about. I was like, why? Like, but David is doing his thing. Like, I don't know, like, I feel like everything is very sparsed out. And then Jacques is, I guess, probably still preying on young men. But I was just curious, like, what do you think comes next? Like, David continuing to use people and manipulate people? Like,
if I'm being honest, I think inevitably, so there are two possibilities, but I think the one that's most likely is David becomes the men that he despises, right? Like, so, but I don't know, because it also could be that he goes back to Paris, never goes to America, right? And lives this openly gay life, right? Like, he can be himself there. But I do feel as if he had definitely married Hella, then that would have just been a prolonged, I don't know, like, just like a prolonged roller coaster, because I feel like inevitably he would have given in to his desires at some point, right? So I feel like what we saw happen there is something that would have happened between them. It just would have taken a longer span of time. So I don't know what happens next. I don't know if I don't know if David finds peace. I don't know if he comes to terms with his sexuality. I don't know if he goes back to America and takes accountability, right? Or does he just continue to flee around Europe and, like, hiding from himself, but spontaneously giving into his desires, but battling still? I don't know. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
I think for me, I think it's probably going to be a cycle of the same, because I feel like he has come this far getting what he wants, getting out of things. We didn't even mention like the drunk driving incident where he could have, you know, back in America when he could have killed all of his friends. But just like getting out of things, being able to just continue to like live in his privilege. And I'm very pessimistic, and I think that I think he will probably still continue doing what he's been doing, using people. And that makes me sad, but
it does. And I think that was another piece for me with this book, of that I don't know what message Baldwin was trying to send, but I don't know if we walked away with it, right? So that was the piece. Like, there was no very clear message. There's a lot of things you could, and maybe that makes it genius, right? Like, the artist's job is not to tell us what to think, right? It's just to give us their art, and then you make of it what you will. But I feel as if there was a lot that he was trying to say here. And I don't know if it came across clearly. I don't know. It could just be me. But, yeah.
Yeah, I think this will have to be something that I will have to like dig into again. Like, I think I don't pick it up on first read. Like, I have my thoughts. I picked up a lot of different themes. But I haven't really come away with one clear, like, this is what I got.
And maybe this, right? Life is messy. We have this man.
Yeah. But I can say also, like, I'm not necessarily like upset about that. Like, I'm not upset about coming away, because I feel like there was just so many different things, and because it kind of ends on like this very open sentence, like, we just don't know what comes next. Honestly, I feel like the last few pages we don't really know. Like, we know David's situation, but we don't know what's really going on in Paris beyond like the the news and stuff. So
even I know someone was saying they feel like Giovanni's room was a metaphor for coming out of the closet. And granted, I can see that, right? I think that makes sense. I think it's an oversimplification, but I can see it. But I felt like Giovanni's room was more of a prison than a closet. Like, so yeah, I don't know, but yeah. So overall, I guess, would you say this is like a must read? You should read it when you have time. Like, what did you just love it? Like, what was your takeaway?
I liked it. I liked it a lot. I don't think it's a must read. I do think that it's something that I feel like anybody can take something away from, especially the fact that David from start to finish is like kind of getting what he wants, but what is happening around the people around him. And in fact, like 2 deaths happen around him, like in very close circles. So it's like, he's got what he wants, but every person around him is like facing destruction. So I feel like it can definitely spark up some good discussions, maybe a book club pick. I don't know. I don't think it's a must read though. I don't.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would definitely say like read it when you have time. I'm glad I picked it up. It's one I think that I'll need to come back to at some point. Probably not right now, but I think it's one that I'll pick up again in a couple of years, and maybe I'll get something different next time. But for this first read, I think it's like, I think everything by Baldwin should be read, but this wouldn't be like high on my list of works of Baldwin that you should get to.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, did you have to get it out? Or you just want to share?
No. Thank you for reading it with me though, and discussing it with me.
Absolutely. This was fun. I'm a little sad it's over.
Me too. Me too. Well, I mean, fine. Like, hit me up. We can like definitely do it again. I really liked us like picking our books and then coming together and like voting like what we were going to choose to talk about. So I would definitely be open to doing this again if you are.
Absolutely. All right. So thanks everyone for watching. Tuning into Locked and Learned, our summer discussions, and maybe you'll see another one.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Also, for those of you inquiring, I do still have buttons, my MsMalcolmHughes pins, and the details on how to get those are below.